Mark had been on Varela for 3 years, working as a human engineer in one of the planet's largest spaceport repair stations. Life here was different from Earth. Brighter skies, taller trees, and people whose eyes shimmered with faint silver patterns whenever they smiled. But to Mark, the most beautiful thing on this world was Rena. She was quick with her laughter, sharp with her mind, and fearless when speaking to anyone, even the sternest of alien traders. Mark had met her during a repair job when she had come in to argue about a shipping delay. Somehow, in between her determined words and his awkward explanations, they had started talking about other things, about music, about stars, about food. Soon, they began seeing each other more often, first as friends, then as something more. It had taken him months to admit it to himself, but he was in love. And now, standing with her on the balcony of her family's home, under a sky streaked with 3 glowing moons, he was ready to say it out loud. Mark's palms felt sweaty as he held the small silver ring he had ordered from Earth months ago. His voice came out softer than he expected. "Rena," he began, his heart pounding. "I have something I want to ask you." She turned to him, her eyes reflecting the moons like tiny mirrors. "You sound nervous," she teased. He took a deep breath. "I am nervous, but I know what I want. I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" For a moment, she said nothing. The wind shifted, carrying the soft scent of virilan flowers between them. Then her face broke into a bright smile. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will." Mark felt a wave of relief and joy rush through him. He slipped the ring onto her finger and she looked down at it with a curious expression, turning it in the moonlight. Then, almost as if she remembered something important, her smile wavered just slightly. "There is one thing," she said slowly. Mark blinked. "One thing?" "Yes." She hesitated, looking away for the first time. "On Virela, marriage is not like on Earth. There is a law, a galactic law that all citizens here follow. If you marry me, you must also marry my sister." Mark stared at her, certain he had misheard. What?" She met his gaze again, her voice calm but serious. "It is our custom, and also part of the wider law that applies to many worlds in this sector. When a person has a sister who is not yet married, both sisters are joined to the same spouse to keep the family together. It is not optional." Mark felt the words like a cold drop of water down his back. "You're serious?" "I am," Rena said, her expression softening. "I would not have accepted without telling you. I love you, Mark. But if you wish to marry me, you will also be wed to Lena. It is the way of our people." The name felt strange in his mind. Lena. He had heard Rena mention her younger sister before, that she was a researcher in the capital, quiet, and rarely visited. He had never met her, never even seen a picture. And now, somehow, this stranger was part of the proposal. "This isn't exactly what I imagined when I thought about asking you to marry me," he said, trying to keep his tone light, though his mind was spinning. "I understand," Rena said gently. "It is not what humans are used to. You have the right to walk away if you cannot accept it. But if you wish to marry me, this is the only way." Mark turned away for a moment, looking out at the city lights below the balcony. The tall crystal towers shimmered in the moonlight, and airships moved slowly between them like glowing insects. Somewhere out there was Lena, a person he didn't know, whose life would now be tied to his if he said yes. He thought about Earth's customs, how marriage was a choice between two people, a bond built over time. He thought about the quiet evenings with Rena, about how she made even the most ordinary moments feel bright. Could he give that up? Could he accept something so unfamiliar? "Does Lena even want this?" he asked finally. "I do not know," Rena admitted. She will follow the law, but she may not be happy about it at first. That is why we must speak to the council tomorrow. They will explain the law fully. You will meet her, and then you can decide. Mark nodded slowly, his mind still a swirl of questions. Tomorrow, then. They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them carrying a weight that had not been there before. Rena reached out and took his hand. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "know that I wanted you." That part has never changed. Mark squeezed her hand in return, but his thoughts were already chasing themselves in circles. He had come here tonight thinking the hardest part would be asking her to marry him. Now, the real challenge was only just beginning. When he left her home later that night, the streets felt strangely quiet. The alien sky above seemed larger, almost watchful. As he walked back toward his apartment, the silver ring on Rena's finger stayed in his mind, shining like a promise, and like a question he wasn't sure he could answer. Tomorrow, he would face the council. Tomorrow, he would meet Lena. And tomorrow, he would have to decide if love was strong enough to carry him into a marriage unlike anything a human had ever imagined. The next morning, Mark woke early, though he had barely slept. His mind had been chasing thoughts in endless circles all night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rena's face, smiling yet serious, telling him about the law. And each time, the same questions came. What kind of law was this? Why would a marriage include a stranger? Could he even agree to such a thing? By the time the suns had risen, he had no answers. Rena met him outside his apartment, dressed in a formal, deep blue robe that shimmered under the light. She carried herself with the calm confidence he had always admired, but he could see tension in her eyes. "Are you ready?" she asked. "As ready as I can be," Mark replied. They walked together toward the center of the city. The streets of Varela were wide and smooth, lined with tall towers of glass and crystal that reflected the light like prisms. The air smelled faintly of the sea, carried inland by soft winds. Traders in bright robes called out from their stalls, selling fruits that glowed faintly and metals that seemed to hum when touched. But Mark noticed none of it for long. His mind was on the council hall. It stood in the center of a wide plaza, its walls carved from pale stone that seemed to glow from within. A great archway marked the entrance, and two tall guards in silver armor stood on either side. As Mark and Rena approached, the guards stepped aside and bowed slightly. Inside, the hall was vast and silent. The ceiling rose high above them, painted, with swirling patterns that told the history of the Virayan people, their arrival on this world, their great cities, and their many alliances with other planets. At the far end, a raised platform held 7 tall chairs, each carved with a different symbol. The council members were already seated. They were all Virelans, but each wore a robe of a different color, showing their place in the order. Their silver-patterned eyes studied Mark as he approached, and he felt a faint weight in that gaze, as if they could see not just his face but his thoughts as well. An elder with a deep red robe leaned forward. His voice was calm, but carried easily through the hall. "You are Mark of Earth?" "Yes," Mark said, trying to keep his voice steady. "And you wish to join with Rena of Varela in marriage?" Mark glanced at Rena, then back to the elder. "Yes, but..." "She told me there is a law that says I must also marry her sister. I don't understand why." The elder nodded slowly, as if expecting this question. "The law is not meant to confuse. It is meant to protect. In our culture, the bond between siblings is sacred. When one sister marries, the other joins that union if she has not yet chosen a partner. This ensures the family remains whole and no sister is left apart. It is not a matter of choice for us. It is the way of our people, and it has been so for hundreds of cycles." A woman in a green robe spoke next, her tone gentle. We understand this may seem strange to humans, but in our experience, such unions strengthen families, and families are the strength of our world. You would not be forced to love both equally in the same way, but you would be bound to them both by law, by name, and by home. Mark's hands tightened at his sides. And if I refuse? The red-robed elder's expression remained calm. Then the marriage to Rena cannot take place. Our law applies to all who live here, citizen or visitor. You would remain free, but separate. The words settled heavily in the air. Mark's chest felt tight. He had known there would be a choice, but hearing it from the council made it real. Rena stepped forward, her voice steady but warm. I did not hide this from you, Mark. I wanted you to know before you agreed. I know it is not easy, but this is my world, my family. I cannot change this law. Another council member, an elder in gold robes, spoke. There is also the matter of meeting Lena. You should know her before you decide. The law may bind you, but it is not blind. If there is clear harm or deep conflict, exceptions can be made, but such cases are rare. Mark nodded slowly. Then I'll meet her. The gold-robed elder pressed a small crystal on the arm of his chair, and a soft chime echoed in the hall. A side door opened, and a young woman entered. She was tall, with the same silver-patterned eyes as Rena, but her expression was cooler, more reserved. She wore a simple white robe, her dark hair tied back neatly. This is Lena, the elder said. You may speak freely here. Lena looked at Mark with a calm, unreadable gaze. So you are the human my sister wishes to marry. Mark nodded. And you are the sister I've been told I must marry as well. That is correct, Lena said, her tone neither harsh nor kind. I will not pretend I wished for this arrangement. I had plans of my own. But I respect our law, and I respect my sister's choice. Whether you agree or not is for you to decide. Something about her directness made Mark's shoulders relax slightly. She was not pretending, not trying to hide her feelings. That, at least, he could understand. Rena stepped between them slightly, her voice soft. Mark, I know this is much to take in, but I wanted you to meet her, to see she is not an enemy in this. Mark studied Lena for a moment longer. She seemed intelligent, steady, perhaps even kind beneath the cool surface. But she was still a stranger, and the thought of binding his life to hers in an instant felt overwhelming. The red-robed elder spoke again. You have until the next rotation to decide. We will respect your choice, whatever it may be, but know that such chances come only once. If you refuse now, you cannot ask again later. Mark nodded. I understand. As they left the hall, the bright sunlight outside felt almost too sharp. Rena walked beside him in silence, her hand brushing his but not taking it. Somewhere deep inside, Mark knew the decision would not be simple. The council had not pressured him, but their words carried weight. Weight he could not ignore. Tomorrow, he would have to decide whether his love for Rena was strong enough to carry him into a life unlike anything he had ever imagined. Mark had thought the council meeting was the hard part. He was wrong. The real challenge was sitting across from Lena now, in the quiet corner of a garden cafe that overlooked the lower city. Rena had arranged for the three of them to meet properly, away from the formal hall and the sharp gazes of the elders. She had said it would help everyone understand each other better. Mark had agreed, though a small part of him wondered if it would just make his choice harder. The cafe was peaceful, with soft music playing from hidden speakers. Flowering vines climbed the walls, their petals swaying gently in the breeze. The city below looked almost unreal, with sunlight glinting off the crystal towers and slow-moving airships drifting above the streets. Rena sat beside him, her warm smile a steady presence. Lena sat opposite, her posture straight, hands folded neatly on the table. She had ordered a cup of clear herbal tea, which she hadn't touched yet. Mark decided to break the silence. I appreciate you agreeing to meet like this. Yesterday was a lot. Lena's expression softened slightly. For me as well, I am used to making my own choices. This situation does not follow my plans. What plans? Mark asked, curious. I am a researcher, she said simply. My work involves studying deep-sea life forms from our southern oceans. I spend months away from the city, living in floating labs with other scientists. Marriage, even to someone from Virella, was not something I thought about for now. Mark nodded slowly. I can understand that. Back on Earth, I was the same way. I focused on my work and didn't think about this until Rena. At that, Rena gave him a small smile and squeezed his arm. Lena looked at her sister for a moment before speaking again. You should know, I am not against you personally. You seem honest. But our law is old, and it does not bend easily. If you choose to marry Rena, I will follow it. I will not try to make your life difficult. But I will not force closeness either. Mark studied her face. There was no anger there, only truth. She spoke plainly, and he respected that. Still, he felt the weight of what she was saying, that even if he agreed, it might be a long time before the three of them truly felt like a family. The waiter brought their food, interrupting his thoughts. Rena had ordered a dish of grilled river fish with bright green sauce, while Lena's plate held a simple salad of red and gold leaves. Mark had chosen something safe, bread filled with spiced vegetables, a dish he had grown to like since coming to Virella. As they ate, the conversation shifted. Rena talked about a market festival that would happen next week, and Lena shared a story about a research trip where a curious sea creature had stolen her team's measuring tools. Mark found himself laughing more than he expected. Lena's humor was subtle, almost hidden, but it was there. By the time the plates were empty, the tension in the air had eased a little. Still, Mark knew the real question hadn't gone away. After lunch, Rena suggested they walk through the garden that surrounded the cafe. The paths curved between tall trees with leaves that shimmered silver in the light, and small ponds reflected the sky above. The air was cooler here, filled with the sound of water flowing over smooth stones. Mark found himself walking beside Lena while Rena stopped to speak to a gardener she knew. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Lena glanced at him. Do you love my sister? The question was direct but not unkind. Yes, Mark said without hesitation. I didn't expect it, but I do. Then you must think carefully, Lena said, because marrying her means joining her life fully. That includes me. I will not stand in the way, but I cannot be invisible either. If you choose this path, it will not be easy at first, but in time, perhaps it could work. Her words carried no threat, only an honest warning. Mark looked out over the pond, the water rippling in the breeze. I want to believe it could work, but I've never faced something like this before. On Earth, marriage is between two people. This is new to me. Lena gave a small nod. It is new to you, but not to us. You will have the council's support and Rena's, mine as well in my own way. But the choice is yours. They walked in silence for a while after that, the sound of their steps blending with the gentle splash of water. When they rejoined Rena, she seemed relieved to see them side by side, even if they weren't speaking much. She looped her arm through Mark's and smiled. I'm glad we did this. It feels better now. Mark managed a small smile in return, though inside his thoughts were still tangled. Meeting Lena had made things clearer in some ways. She was not an enemy, and she would not fight him if he agreed. But it also made the choice heavier, because now she was no longer just a name. She was a person, with her own life, her own plans, and her own place in the decision. As they left the garden, the late afternoon light painted the towers in shades of gold and orange. The city looked peaceful, almost timeless, but Mark felt the hours slipping away. Tomorrow he would need to give the council his answer, and no matter what he chose, it would change the course of all three of their lives. Mark sat in his small apartment, the lights dim, the air quiet except for the soft hum of the cooling unit. The meeting with Lena had ended hours ago, yet his mind replayed it again and again. He had seen her as more than just a name now. She was calm, intelligent, and honest. But she was still a stranger he would be bound to by law if he chose to marry Rena. He knew he couldn't make this decision alone. He needed another point of view, someone who understood human ways and could help him see things clearly. That was when he thought of the Earth Embassy in Varela City. The embassy building stood near the trade district, its white walls and blue flag a clear sign of human presence on this alien world. Mark had been there only once before, for routine, work paperwork, but now it felt like the only place that might give him the answers he needed. When he arrived, a tall man in a dark suit greeted him at the door. His name tag read Ambassador Cole. He was older, with short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything. "Mr. Harris," Cole said, shaking his hand firmly, "I understand you asked for an urgent meeting. What can I do for you?" Mark followed him into a private office, the soundproof walls shutting out the noise of the city. He sat down and took a deep breath before explaining. "I've proposed to someone," Mark began, "a Viralan woman named Rena. She accepted, but then told me about a law here, the Galactic marriage law. It says I must also marry her sister if I marry her. Yesterday, the council confirmed it. I met the sister today, and now I don't know what to do." Cole leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowing. "Ah, I've heard of that law. Not many humans have faced it, but it's real. Virelans have followed it for centuries. It's considered a sacred tradition, and more importantly, it's tied to their interplanetary agreements. If you refuse, the marriage ends. If you accept, you'll be part of both sisters' lives." "I understand that," Mark said, "but this isn't how humans do marriage. It feels unnatural to me, and yet I don't want to lose Rena." Cole's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mark, I'm going to be honest with you. If you refuse, it's not just a personal matter. Rena is connected to an important family. The council will see your refusal as a rejection of their culture. That could damage relations between Earth and Varela, especially in the trade sector. I'm not saying you should agree just for politics, but you should know the stakes are higher than just your feelings." Mark sat back, the words sinking in. "So you're telling me my choice could affect more than just my life?" "Yes," Cole said plainly. "If you accept, the council will welcome you. You'll be seen as a bridge between our worlds. If you refuse, they may not punish you directly, but the relationship between our governments will cool. That means harder business deals, slower trade approvals, and more suspicion." Mark rubbed his forehead. "That's a lot of weight to carry for a personal decision." Cole nodded. "It is, but you're not the first to face something like this. Cultural differences can be complicated. I've seen humans adapt to Viralan customs and make it work, but it's never easy." Mark thought about Rena's bright laugh, the way she could turn even a difficult day into something better. He thought about Lena's calm voice in the garden, telling him she would follow the law but not force closeness. And now he thought about the pressure of two worlds quietly watching his choice. "I need to think," Mark said finally. "Of course," Cole replied. "Just remember, whatever you choose, stand by it. The worst thing you can do is agree and then back out later. That would cause far more harm than refusing now." Mark left the embassy, feeling the weight of the conversation pressing down on him. The streets outside were busy, filled with Vireyans and off-world traders moving between stalls and shops. He walked slowly, his thoughts too loud to let him notice much of his surroundings. That evening, Rena came to his apartment. She wore a simple dress and carried a small bag of fruit from the market. She placed it on the table and sat down opposite him. "You met with the embassy," she said quietly. "Yes," Mark admitted. "They told me my choice could affect more than just us." Rena nodded slowly. "I thought they might say that. My family is known in the council. If you refuse, they will not be angry, but they will remember. If you accept, they will honor you." Mark looked at her across the table. "Rena, I love you, but this law, it's not how I imagined my life. I've never thought about marriage this way." "I know," she said softly. "I don't ask you to love Lena as you love me, only to accept her as part of your life, as part of our home. She will not fight you. She is not against you. She will simply be there. In time, perhaps you will even call her a friend." Her words were steady, but Mark could see the hint of worry in her eyes. She wanted him to say yes, but she wouldn't force it. They talked late into the night, about their cultures, about what the future might look like, about the possible challenges and the quiet moments that could make it worth it. When Rena finally left, Mark stood at the window, looking out. At the city lights, the council's deadline was close. The decision was his, and it would shape not only his life but the way others saw him. Human, living under alien law. Tomorrow, he would face the triad trial, the cultural test the council had arranged. If he could not work alongside both sisters, the marriage would be denied. And that, perhaps, would be the final measure of whether he could truly belong here. The morning of the triad trial began with a sharp chime at Mark's door. When he opened it, Rena and Lena stood together, both wearing light travel clothes and carrying small packs. Rena's smile was warm, while Lena's expression was calm, but focused. "The council sent transport," Rena said. "The trial begins soon." Mark grabbed his pack and followed them outside. A sleek silver transport craft waited by the street. As they stepped inside, the door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, and the craft lifted into the sky. From the window, Mark saw the city shrink below them. Towers and bridges gave way to open plains and winding rivers. The pilot, a quiet Viralan, in dark robes, guided the craft toward a mountain range that shimmered faintly in the morning light. After about an hour, they landed on a wide stone platform. Several council members were already there, dressed in ceremonial colors. The red-robed elder from before stepped forward. "Today," the elder said, "you will face 3 tasks. These are not battles of strength alone, but tests of trust, skill, and unity. You must work together to succeed. If you cannot, the marriage will not be approved." Mark nodded. Rena and Lena did the same. The first task was set in a dense forest, at the base of the mountains. The council led them to a marked starting point where the elder explained the rules. A map is hidden in the forest. It will lead you to the next stage, but you must find it together. Separate, and you will fail. They entered the forest, the air cool and filled with the scent of moss. The trees were tall and covered in silver green, leaves that rustled softly in the breeze. At first, they searched quietly, moving through the undergrowth and scanning the tree trunks and rocks. After a while, Rena called out, "Mark, over here." He hurried to where she stood. She had found a small carved symbol on a tree. Lena joined them, studying the mark. "It points north," she said. "The map must be in that direction." Following the clue, they found the map tucked inside a hollow log. Rena unfolded it, and Mark saw it was drawn on thin metal with glowing lines marking a path toward a nearby river. The second task began at that river. The water was wide and fast, and the council had placed a floating platform on the far side. The elder explained, "You must build a way to cross without swimming. Use only the materials on this shore. Mark scanned the area. There were long bamboo-like stalks, ropes of dried vine, and several flat wooden boards. Let's make a raft, he suggested. They worked together, cutting the stalks to size while Lena tied them tightly with the vines. Rena helped lift the boards into place, creating a stable surface. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold their weight. Pushing the raft into the water, they climbed on. The current pulled at them, but Rena steered with a long pole while Mark and Lena kept the balance. Slowly, they reached the far shore, stepping onto the platform together. The final task was the most difficult. The council led them up a narrow path to a rocky ridge where a tall metal frame stood against the sky. At its top, a small glowing sphere floated inside a transparent case. "This is the Orb of Unity," the elder said. "You must retrieve it. But the climb requires 3, 1 to support, 1 to climb, and 1 to guide. Each must trust the others completely," they discussed quickly. Lena was the lightest, so she would climb. Mark would anchor the ropes at the base, and Rena would call out directions. Lena moved quickly but carefully, her hands gripping the metal bars, while Rena called out which footholds were secure. Mark kept the rope steady, bracing against the pull as Lena climbed higher. Near the top, Lena paused. "The bar here is loose," she called down. Rena's voice was calm. "Shift to your left. There's a stronger hold there." Lena followed her guidance, reached the case, and gently lifted the sphere free. She began her descent, moving slower, now to keep it safe. When she touched the ground, she placed the glowing orb in the elder's hands. The elder looked at each of them in turn. "You have passed all 3 tasks. You worked together, trusted one another, and respected each other's strengths. The trial is complete." Mark felt a rush of relief. The challenges had been tiring, but they had also shown him something important. Rena's quick thinking, Lena's steady precision, and his own determination had blended well. They had not argued. They had not failed. They had acted like a team. As the council recorded the results, Rena turned to him. "You did well." "You both did," Mark replied. He looked at Lena, who gave a small nod. On the flight back to the city, Mark sat by the window again. The mountains faded into plains, then into the glittering streets of Varela. He realized that the trial hadn't just been for the council. It had been for him, too. Now he had seen what life with both sisters might feel like. It was still unfamiliar, still daunting, but no longer impossible. Tomorrow, the council would expect his decision. And for the first time since this began, Mark felt he might know what to say. The next evening, Mark found himself alone with Lena in the quiet study room of Rena's family home. The soft glow from the lamps made the room feel warm and safe. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, but inside, the silence held something important. A chance to speak honestly. Lena sat across from him, her hands folded on the small wooden table. She looked at him with steady eyes, as if deciding how much to say. "You want to know why the law exists?" she began quietly. Mark nodded. "Yes. It is hard for me to understand. It seems strange for 2 sisters to share one husband. I want to know the reason." Lena took a slow breath. "It is not just law or tradition. It is about family and pain." She paused, then continued. "Long ago, in our history there were many wars. Families were split apart. When a man married one sister, the other was left alone. Some were forgotten, some lost in sadness. It broke the family." Mark listened carefully. He could see the weight of those old stories in Lena's eyes. "So the law was made," Lena said, "to stop that pain, to keep sisters together, no matter what. When a man marries one, he must accept the other too. It is a promise to protect both." Mark thought about that. It was more than just rules. It was about love and care for the whole family. Does it always work? He asked. Lena gave a small smile, not bitter, but real. No, sometimes it is difficult. People have different feelings, but many find strength in it. The family stays whole. She looked at Mark more closely. I did not want this at first. I wanted my own path like I told you. But now I see the law helps protect my sister and me. It gives us a bond that cannot be broken. Mark felt respect growing in him. Lena was not just following rules. She was carrying a hope that they could all be stronger together. I want to do what is right, Mark said quietly, but I worry I may fail. Lena shook her head. You will not fail if you try. You must be patient and honest. With Rena, with me, and with yourself. The two sat for a long moment, the room filled with understanding. Mark stood up and smiled. Thank you, Lena. I feel I know you better now. And the law is not just cold words. It is about heart. Lena nodded and smiled back. The next day, Mark returned to the council chamber to give his answer. The elders waited, their eyes calm but attentive. Mark spoke clearly. I choose to marry Rena and Lena. I will honor both as part of my life. The council members exchanged looks of approval. The red-robed elder nodded. Your choice shows respect and courage. Welcome to our family. Rena and Lena came forward and took Mark's hands. In that moment, a new chapter began, one built on trust, understanding, and love beyond old boundaries. The day of the wedding arrived under a bright blue sky that stretched over the city of Virella like a vast, calm sea. The streets buzzed softly with the hum of preparations. Flowers of many colors decorated every corner, and lanterns floated, gently in the breeze. The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when Mark, the human from Earth, would stand with Rena and Lena and become part of their world. Mark stood in a quiet room of the family home, dressed in a simple robe woven from light blue fabric. He looked at himself in the mirror, trying to calm the nerves that still fluttered in his chest. This was not the wedding he had imagined back on Earth. It was different, yes, but it was real. And it was his. Rena entered the room, her eyes shining brighter than any jewel. She wore a gown made of soft, shimmering threads that caught the light with every movement. She smiled gently at Mark, and his heart skipped. Are you ready? She asked softly. Mark nodded, reaching out to take her hand. A moment later, Lena came in. Her presence was quieter but no less strong. She wore a simple dress of white and silver, her hair pulled back neatly. She looked at Mark with calm eyes that held no anger, only acceptance. We all are, she said quietly. The three of them stepped outside together. The crowd had gathered in the great plaza where the council awaited. The elders sat in there, carved chairs, their robes bright and serious. But the faces in the crowd were warm, filled with hope and curiosity. As Mark walked beside Rena and Lena, he felt the weight of many eyes on him. He thought about the long road he had traveled, the doubts, the fears, the council meetings, the trials. And now, here he was, about to say the words that would bind their lives together. The head elder stood and spoke in a clear voice that echoed over the plaza. Today, we honor a union not only of two hearts, but of three lives joined by law and love. Mark of Earth has chosen to accept our tradition and our family. Let this marriage be a symbol of unity between worlds and between souls. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. The three exchanged vows in the old language of Virella, promises to support and care for one another. Mark repeated the words carefully, feeling their weight settle into his heart. After the vows, the elders placed a silver band on each of their fingers, a sign of their bond. The crowd cheered softly, some clapping, others wiping tears from their eyes. Later, at the celebration feast, Mark sat between Rena and Lena. He saw how the sisters shared stories and laughed easily, their bond strong and true. And he realized that while the path was not easy, it was filled with moments worth every challenge. Rena leaned closer and whispered, "Thank you for choosing us." Lena smiled quietly. "We will make this work. Together." Mark looked at both of them and nodded. Together. As the sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Mark felt something he had never known before, a deep sense of belonging, not just to one person, but to a family, not just to one world, but to two.